It was a Friday morning at Richneck Elementary School in Newport News, Virginia. The sky was clear, the kind of pale winter blue that makes the air feel thin and cold. Inside the school, laughter echoed down the hallways, the kind of laughter that only 6-year-olds can make. Innocent, unfiltered, unburdened. Abby Zwerner, a 25-year-old first-grade teacher, walked into her classroom with her usual calm grace. She carried a cup of coffee, a folder of lesson plans, and that quiet hope that every teacher carries, the hope that today would be better than the last. She had been teaching at Richneck for less than 2 years, but her colleagues already knew her as a steady one. She had patience that didn't run out easily. The children loved her, especially the ones who struggled to fit in. Among those children was a 6-year-old boy with a difficult reputation. That morning, the boy arrived late. Staff noticed that he seemed unusually tense. His face was expressionless, his movements slow, deliberate. A few teachers had whispered about his growing aggression in recent weeks. There had been reports. He had thrown objects, cursed, even chased another student once. But it was hard to reconcile that with the smallness of him. He was, after all, only 6. By mid-morning, whispers began to move through the halls like a current. Someone had seen something metallic, something that looked like a gun. A rumor took shape. The boy might be carrying a weapon. At first, no one wanted to believe it. It sounded absurd. A 6-year-old with a gun? But the fear refused to fade. One teacher searched his backpack. Nothing. Another teacher reported that during recess, the boy had shown a gun to a friend, bragging that he would shoot the teacher. The friend didn't take him seriously. How could you? He was just a child. But the message made its way to staff. By noon, concern had reached the assistant principal, Ebony Parker. Multiple employees approached her, urging that the child be checked again, that someone intervene. But according to later testimony, Parker dismissed the warnings. She allegedly said his pockets were too small to hide a gun. The staff were told to return to their duties. Inside her classroom, Abby noticed the boy's mood. He sat apart from the others, staring. His hand stayed inside his jacket pockets. At one point, she bent to help another student with a worksheet, and when she looked up, she saw his eyes fixed on her, not angry, just hollow. Something about it unsettled her. The hours crept by. The ordinary rhythm of teaching, phonics, reading time, story discussion, continued, but a thin line of tension seemed to run through the air. No one knew that a loaded 9mm pistol was inside that room. At approximately 2 in the afternoon, it happened. The sound was sharp, flat, final. Gunshot. Students screamed. Papers flew. Abby felt the impact before she understood what had happened. The bullet entered through her left hand, tearing through bone and tissue and continued into her chest. The pain was instant and searing. For a fraction of a second, her mind refused to process it. Then instinct took over. She rose to her feet, blood pouring from her palm, and shouted for her students to run. Her voice, steady, commanding, cut through the chaos. Children bolted toward the hallway. One tripped. Another froze. She pulled them up, ushered them out, step by step, until the last child crossed the threshold. Only then did she stagger backward. Her vision blurred. The air thickened. She managed to make it to the office before collapsing. Police arrived within minutes. The scene they walked into defied logic. A 6-year-old holding a gun. A teacher bleeding out. A class of first graders crying in the hallway. Officers took the boy into custody. He didn't resist. He said very little. Abby was rushed to the hospital. The bullet had collapsed her lung and lodged near her heart. For several days she lay in critical condition, undergoing surgery after surgery. Her family kept vigil, unsure she would survive. And all across America, the same question echoed. How could this happen? The gun, investigators found, belonged to the boy's mother, Deja Taylor. She had purchased it legally but left it unsecured in their home. The boy, curious and angry, had taken it from her purse the night before and hidden it in his backpack. Within weeks, Deja Taylor faced charges of felony child neglect and a misdemeanor for failing to secure her firearm. She later pled guilty and was sentenced to prison. But for Abby, accountability couldn't end there. sound of the gunshot, the look in the child's eyes, the disbelief that followed, and perhaps most hauntingly, the knowledge that it could have been prevented. In April 2023, Abby filed a $40 million lawsuit against the Newport News School Board, naming the assistant principal, Ebony Parker, for gross negligence. She alleged that multiple staff members had reported their fears that the student had a gun, but administrators ignored them. Her complaint detailed the sequence of ignored warnings. 1. A teacher who reported the boy had shown another student a gun. 2. A counselor who asked permission to search his backpack. 3. A reading specialist who begged Parker to take action. 4. And the assistant principal who, according to the suit, failed to call police, failed to remove the child, and failed to lock down the school. For months, the case simmered in the public eye. Critics accused the school district of cover-ups. Parents protested. Teachers demanded stronger safety protocols. Richneck Elementary, once an ordinary suburban school, became a symbol of systemic failure. Abby stayed quiet during her recovery. When she finally spoke publicly, her voice trembled, but her words were sharp. I love being a teacher. I still do. But what happened to me should never have happened to anyone. We all knew something was wrong that day. Nobody listened. In court, she described the moment of the shooting. I looked at him, and I saw the gun, she said. I tried to move, but there wasn't time. I felt it go through my hand, into my chest. I remember thinking, this can't be happening. Medical experts testified about her injuries. She had endured 6 surgeries, still carried fragments of bullet inside her body, and lived with constant pain. Her hand, once her dominant teaching hand, could barely grasp a pen. She had permanent nerve damage and post-traumatic stress. The defense called expert witnesses who argued that Ebony Parker had acted within normal standards, that her decisions, while imperfect, were reasonable given what she knew at the time. They framed the shooting as an unforeseeable tragedy. But the jury saw a pattern: repeated warnings, escalating concerns, and a refusal to act. When the verdict was read in November 2025, Abby sat silently as the judge announced that the jury had awarded her $10 million in damages. Tears slid down her face, not from joy, but from relief. The system had, at last, acknowledged its failure. In interviews afterward, jurors said the evidence was overwhelming. One said, "This wasn't a case about hindsight. This was a case about people refusing to do their jobs." The assistant principal had already resigned. The school district issued a brief statement, expressing sympathy but maintaining that the event was a tragic anomaly. Yet nationwide, the story ignited conversation. How do you discipline or safeguard against violence when the perpetrator is 6? How do you assign blame when innocence and danger collide in the same body? Experts in child psychology called a perfect storm: an unstable child, access to a firearm, and a breakdown of communication. Teachers across the country began demanding metal detectors, stricter safety plans, and trauma training. Some parents pulled their children from schools. Others sent messages of support to Abby, calling her a hero. But Abby rejected that word. Heroes, she said, don't get shot by their students. They just survive it. She has since left teaching entirely after months of rehabilitation. She retrained as a cosmetologist, a job that allows her to work with her right hand while sparing her damaged left. She says she still misses her students, still dreams of their voices, but she cannot walk into a classroom without her heart racing. Her lawsuit and the verdict have already reshaped how some districts handle threats. Newport News schools now use metal detectors and employ additional security officers. Teachers receive updated crisis training. Administrators face stricter accountability measures when warnings are ignored. For Abby, though, change feels personal rather than political. I want my pain to mean something, she told a reporter. If my story can make even one school take a threat seriously, maybe it was worth surviving. Behind the legal drama, the emotional toll lingers. Her once steady hands tremble when she writes. Her breath still catches when she hears loud noises. Yet, when she speaks, there is strength in her voice, a quiet defiance that says she will not be defined by that day alone. The child who shot her remains unnamed publicly because of his age. He was placed in a treatment facility under supervision, far from the public eye. His future is uncertain, shadowed by an act he may never fully understand. What remains clear is that a line was crossed that winter afternoon. Childhood and violence collided, and an entire community was forced to face the consequences. Abby's story is not just about a gun in a classroom. It's about warnings ignored, systems that failed, and the resilience of one woman who refused to be silent. Each time she tells her story, she reminds listeners of the moments that could have changed everything. The teacher who noticed, the staff who spoke up, the administrator who didn't act. Every misstep in that chain led to the sound of a single gunshot in a first-grade classroom. And perhaps that's the hardest part to accept. The tragedy didn't come from nowhere. It was seen, spoken about, and still allowed to happen. For anyone who's ever trusted an institution to protect them, that truth cuts deep. Today, Abby lives quietly, away from the spotlight. She avoids interviews, spends time with her dog, and tries to reclaim the peace that was stolen from her. But she continues to advocate for safer schools, speaking occasionally at teacher workshops and safety seminars. Her message is simple: listen, always listen. Because sometimes survival depends on the moment someone decides to take a warning seriously. And somewhere in the echo of every classroom bell, her story lingers, a reminder that vigilance can save lives and silence can destroy them.